Me and my colleague, we are going to present on academic skills development and professionalizing academic writing. This is a very, very important aspect, as our colleague just highlighted. And I just want to give a brief background that for me, I've been an external examiner for theses and dissertations, master's and PhD, and also for a number of journals, more than 5 journals, where I'm a regular reviewer. And so when I saw this, I was more excited. And my presentation is going to be mainly based on practical experience. So basically, I'm going to loosely define academic writing as a formal writing style used in academic and research institutions by students, professors, and academic researchers. Thank you. And then we do not need to limit academic writing. It's a whole lot. Otherwise, some of the things I've left them. But basically, it could be abstracts, textbooks, essays, theses, academic journal articles, which is what we mainly focus on, and also maybe the books, book reports, conference papers, we also focus on that a lot, dissertations, theses, literary criticisms, research papers, research proposals, project proposals, annotated bibliography, among others. But I just want to focus on pertinent matters around this issue. Why is there a need to professionalize academic writing? Ladies and gentlemen, if we do not professionalize this, nobody will see it as a need. It will be optional. It will be voluntary for people to look for the professional qualification for academic writing. Yet you will all agree with me that at the center of particularly higher and tertiary education is academic writing. So if we are to professionalize it, this will enforce early training, acquisition, and development of academic skills. This needs to be taken care of and done, of course, to enhance chances of research articles being accepted for publication, because most of the people have had fatigue, most of the people have been discouraged from publishing because they try 2-3 times, their papers are being rejected by different journals, for example, but they are really eager to amass academic work, intellectual property, in order to get promoted mostly. And I just want to emphasize that in Africa here, this is one thing which I've realized and which works against everything. And then we have the theses and dissertations to be passed by examiners. And also, we want to win research and project grants locally and globally. But at the center of everything is academic writing. So, which academic writing skills are being referred to? Which need to be developed? Like I've said earlier, I just want to reiterate and emphasize that my presentation is driven by practical experience of more than 10 years. And I've realized that these things which I've listed here are always lacking. Purpose of academic writing, it should be thesis driven. Are you going to establish something? Are you going to prove something? Are you going to design something? And all these things, they do not in most cases come clearly in the first instance. If I look at theses and dissertations, you have the topic, you have the aim, you have the objectives, you have the statement of the problem, and you have maybe the hypothesis and research questions. But it seems like when you look at all these in a purportedly to be one thesis, one dissertation, one research paper, it's like each one of these is spelling out something different. And this is the reason why I normally urge supervisors to say, please do not ask students to bring you topics. Do not write a research paper based on a topic. We need to define our problems in the statement of the problem first, and then we go on now to do our aim objectives and so on, and then later on find a suitable topic. And while it's still on this, I just want to say, for most theses and dissertations, one of my vivid, well-remembered recommendation all the years is that the topic should be realigned to the thesis or a dissertation, because you can't redo it, but it's the topic. And so it shows us the myriad of challenges which are related to purpose definition, relevance of aspects under consideration. This one is worrisome because when I do some interviews with some students, you find we are being told, look for a topic to graduate, do your thesis and dissertation to graduate, and then do we mean well for African industrialization and commercialization? No, we need the SDGs when we consider what we are going to do in our academic writing. Clarity of issues under spotlight, I think I've talked about it. Document segmentation, use of headings and paragraphing, where each paragraph is standing maybe for an idea and so on. Provision of evidence. This one is very, very important. In some cases, I've asked people, when do you do literature review? And I'm given too many different answers and responses. But literature review from the onset to the end. And then when we see 3, 4 authors being giving the same things, we just need to condense and collapse that idea. And then we need to quote them, starting with the latest publication, going backwards. But I can tell you, even as early as 2020, the reviews and theses and dissertations I've marked in 2020, I still see this. We will talk about what then we need to do. Logical arguments, we need them. And the element of bias kills the whole essence and the whole idea and existence of logical arguments, because the bias comes in as we select literature. We only want literature which says what we want. And that bias should not be part of academic writing. And then our arguments are skewed towards what we want. What people do not know is that if we have a balanced literature, we can then generate balanced arguments for and against what we will be doing. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue of the value of academic writings is something which worries me all the time. I see low level. This is Bloom's taxonomy. And when you look at it, at the lowest level, remembering and understanding, this is where most of the research papers hover around. But we need application. We need to analyze in order to improve. We need to evaluate certain existing works. We need to create, and in creating, we could be designing or generating new models. We also need to do all these new things. Let's look at COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. What did it require us to do? To do academic work and academic writings, which would inform the direction to conquer the different areas which were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Which academic writing skills are being referred to? I continue again. Language to be used. We need to use simple language, even if we are professors and doctors, because it should be language for communication. If you write your jargon in your medical field, engineering, and it's meant for public consumption and everybody else, who will hear what you will have said? But also the language should be clear. The language should be correct language with the good tone, not to direct people, to force people to accept and do things. Fairness, particularly in the arguments, so that they are not overdone. Citations, I've talked about it. These skills, among many others which I have not listed, are extremely important to both teaching staff and students. This implies that academic writing skills should be part of the curriculum. It's one of my recommendations. Perfecting academic writing skills for both students and staff can assist higher and tertiary education institutions and research institutions to develop from being teaching to purely and wholly research institutions. And we know that our research too should inform our teaching and community engagement. But people sometimes tend to put silos between. Recommendations. Academic writing skills should be part of the research methods curriculum. And what we do in most cases, when I do institutional evaluations, I also do them quite a lot. I've realized that the staff development and capacity building for such important skills are only done to teaching staff in the higher and tertiary institutions. And so we leave out students. But how about grooming students as they start part one or what others call level 100? Don't you think we would then capture many and we would then make sure the skill is gotten by many students, many people, some of whom are going to be lecturers in future, and they continue through the years to perfect their academic writing skills. Capacity building and capacity development through training workshops for teaching staff and students, of course. Institutional competitions on academic writing, why not? We can do it, and once there's an incentive and a reward, you will find that people want it. Mentoring, coaching, and induction should always be part of the improvement plan, because most young academics lack the academic writing skills and experience, while the elderly professors and doctors also need retooling to catch up with the related current trends and contemporary issues in this important component and aspect. Yes, I just want to quickly move to this. I'm a quality assurance expert, and with that background, it could not be conclusive without referring to what then do we need to do to make sure that we are measuring. Once we do the staff development or we include it in the curriculum, we need to go and check, are people improving? Are they acquiring these academic writing skills? So if we are talking of professionalization, have we put it in place? That's the doing. Where are they going to get it from? Are institutions prepared and ready to also have some of these running as short courses in the institutions? Whilst they are being done, we are checking, and checking its monitoring and evaluation. And then when we monitor and evaluate, we now need to act. If we have introduced the one professional course on academic writing, are people coming on board? If not, why are they not? If they are coming on board, are they benefiting? Are they changing? Are they improving? If not, what are the challenges? What can we do better? And we go back to the drawing board. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I think I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and could have reiterated and also expanded on these aspects. But in the interest of time, I want to thank you for this grand opportunity and hope that one day I'll be given a whole day or a week to talk about academic writing.
Thank you, Violet. I'll come in for it because I think you have actually touched on the main points as such. I'm going to come in at a different angle in the sense. I'm coming in basically, again, with my practical experience, 30 years of writing and publishing over close to 150 journal articles, books, and chapters as such. But I must say that with the supervision of what postgraduate students that I've done, and also with mentoring of early career academics, it seems like there is an assumption that when you get a PhD, you actually can write a journal paper. And the reason I'm saying that is when you actually, if you think about it, and you had a PhD student, you have a PhD student as such, you do a lot of corrections. Actually, the thesis actually goes as the supervisor because you know what the assessors are looking for, which means your experience is not necessarily being translated to the students as such, because you are changing it to make sure that the student gets across when the student actually submits that thesis as such. All right. I'm also doing on the basis 30 years ago when I wrote my PhD, that's exactly what happened to me. My supervisor would change the sentences, would say, no, this is what you're trying to say. And I'm looking there, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. He said, no, this is what you are trying to say because that's what is going to be accepted by the examiner. Because there's a way of stating the facts that the examiner knows what it's all about. And the way you think and the way the examiner thinks is what I think actually is academic writing as such. Because that's the gap, that how do you translate what you have to them? And that's not that easy when you actually start off in academia itself. So I'll give you in terms of professional development. Actually, you just touched upon my background another lifetime ago when I actually was a professional developer in University of Western Australia. And one of the things we were pushing, and you're absolutely right, we were trying to push in terms of writing as part of the curriculum in terms of developing that postgraduate experience as such. Did we succeed? The answer is no. And the reason we did not succeed is the argument came from the academics that the PhD has now gone in through a transition phase or an evolution phase, you may say, from where you write a PhD and you walk out, but now before you actually get your PhD, you actually publish it. So the argument was won by the academics saying, we are doing that training because you asked to publish at least a few papers, a minimum of 3 papers now in the PhD, especially in many Australian universities, before you walk out. The experience is there. But does that mean that the person actually is a great writer? The answer is no. Well, in practicality, this is what we did. We did what's known as a mentoring system. We teamed up under professional development, early career academics with seasoned academics, the older or the elderly academics who have published a lot. They would be actually part of the team writing it, and each person would take a turn to be the lead writer. But what we did was, in this particular way of putting academic writing in the center, was for them to write it, and then we encourage them not to actually send to the so-called C journals or the D journals, but send it to the A journals. And when the A journals actually review, they tag your what do you call submissions apart. And when they tear the submissions apart, the academics who wrote it actually see the light of day and say, I didn't think about it. And what did we do with this feedback? And this was the practical part of professional development. We took that feedback from an A+, at that time there was an A+ journal Australia used to do, and we basically used that information to drive change in the way they wrote that paper And 80% of these groups actually got the paper accepted in the next round in another journal, possibly an A or a B journal. So it was a practical application of trying to get that writing skill into, what do you call it, into practice as such. There was another one that we actually initiated, and these are the practical parts of it. We actually had a writing, what we call retreat. Violet was talking, I think, more of the PhD student or the postgraduate student. But you look at the part of the teachers who came out of it. We got them into a writing retreat. And what was a writing retreat? Bring the article that you want, all right, with what actually Violet did was exactly what we did. We went through the basic theory on what a paper should be. They wrote the papers, they came back, and the instructor and the class dissected the paper, everybody's paper. So it was a very small class. We made sure the classes were about a dozen. We dissected the paper, tore it apart, and we told every academic, expect this. They took the feedback, changed it, and then submitted it. And it was, again, around 80 to 90% acceptance, because there was a peer review process where we were actually going through prior to the submission. So exactly when he said, what is the aim? What is the methodology? And we would dissect the paper in front of the class, question by question. And if it's not there, you didn't do a complete picture, and that is the possibility that the journal will knock it out. So if you see, what we have done is, Violet is absolutely right. It's not only an issue maybe in South Africa or Africa itself. It's an issue globally of the PhDs that are coming out as such. All right. And I'm not against PhDs which are done online, but the PhD done online sometimes, and not always, has not the ability to have that interaction with your academic. So we are, at the time when I left the institution, we were actually going in the direction to try and develop an academic development where we can actually do the same workshop or the same retreat in an online environment. I can't actually tell you what happened to it, but it was in the pipeline. But the idea was, we need to start writing. Maybe I will go back and maybe relate this to exactly as well. Maybe Violet, you might have actually put me in the category of the elderly academic to retool. But what I'm saying is, it's pretty hard to get an elderly academic back into the classroom and tell them how to write, because they'll say, I've got X number of publications as such anyway. So it is going to be hard. But maybe I would rather go on the basis how I started off. I started off an academic very, very slow. In my first 5 years, you wouldn't even guess how many papers I actually wrote. I actually wrote 5 conference papers, that's it. All right. Around my 5th year, my pro vice chancellor called me up. He said, if you want to move up the ladder, it's time you actually started writing. That's when I actually started writing papers, started getting rejections, learning from the process. All right. And there was nobody there to teach you. All right. But the point is to learn from the feedback, incorporate the feedback, and learn how to actually provide that response to your journals, when you actually submit it. Nobody taught us this, but this is what I taught my students, by basically saying, when you get your feedback, there's a way to respond to their journals, which will then say, yeah, actually you've addressed every issue we have actually raised. So, I mean, I know we are running out of time, but I think we just set the scene. Yes, agree with Violet? Essential. Should it be part of the curriculum? Absolutely. Will you win it? I'm not really sure. We didn't win it because you got to look at the program you have. And if it's an essential feature, maybe your professional development plan is, how do you support that to get them to achieve those 3 publications or whatever? And maybe it's an initial one actually to come in. When I did my PhD, there was a weekly session that a very senior academic will hold a session every week. Give you a paper on a Friday, and the next Friday we come in, and he'll ask you to discuss what's wrong with that paper, but yet it's published. All right, so we got to learn how to do critical analysis, critical dissection of the what you call a paper, and know what actually goes in to that particular when it goes into an article that you actually write. I think I better stop here, because I think as the chairman said, this is a topic that you can actually keep talking for a very, very long time. And I think if you want to open up for questions, we might be actually we might as well, because I think you got about 5 minutes left anyway.